Digital Excellence Live. Today we will be meeting a special guest that I have actually a pleasure of knowing for quite some time, Dr. Lior Tabansky. Lior is Head of Research Development at the Blavatnik Interdisciplinary Cyber Research Center at Tel Aviv University. And as we know today, we will be talking about how cyber actually influences the innovation, how it can impact the processes that we have within a company. And we'll talk some more about how those two branches of the organization can support each other. But before we start on that, I just wanted to make a short let's say, personal branding intro for Lior, as he is working with Cyber Week as well. The 13th edition of the conference is just around the corner in the end of June. Lior, could you just tell us a little bit what are the highlights of this year's conference and what is the most interesting topic in the background, in your opinion?
Hello, thank you for the opportunity. Well, Cyber Week this year will continue the long-standing tradition of bringing interesting speakers and more policymakers. This year, similar to past year, we expect several thousand people in attendance. From the speaker side, we expect even bigger American delegations this year. In addition to the delegations from several developed countries that will bring a mix of officials, entrepreneurs, and experts to our stage. We are very proud that we are able to resume this tradition, to resume this important matchmaking and knowledge sharing event after the unfortunate slowing down because of COVID. So important to note, unlike many conferences in our field, ours is free to attend, especially for the audience of this live, special example. So it's free to attend. Feel free to come and just register and get in.
And what, in your opinion, will be the most interesting highlights when it comes to the subject matter? I know that you will have several events around the impact of the AI, which is quite a hot topic recently, on the cybersecurity, as well as a really interesting emerging issue that I think that I would like to talk to you about later. So quantum computing and quantum encryption, how it will be shaping the cybersecurity background in the future.
Well, it is true that interest in artificial intelligence is rising. We are still in the process of making a good mix between the options that we have in terms of participants and experts. From the European perspective, there is a growing prevalence of discussion of regulation of artificial intelligence. So this will be one of the topics, but more interestingly, we hope to see examples of technical and business innovations leveraging the potential of this technology. The technology is here. We are familiar with this for quite a long time now. So the exciting things will be in the organizations and firms that will be able to leverage this potential to generate real value in their business. So we hope to see some of that. For quantum encryption, again, this is a long-standing topic. There are some signs of increased commercial investment in this field, with currently the main target markets being security and government. So we do expect to showcase a couple of innovations. However, this is much less mature from a technological and business perspective than artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is often, unfortunately, just a rebranding of existing approaches and technologies that have been with us for a few decades. With the quantum computing, yes, there are advanced innovations, but understanding them and making sense of them requires much more expert knowledge than in other fields. So this is also one of the reasons that this topic perhaps is less covered than the more perhaps easily understandable issues of cybersecurity in general, and artificial intelligence and generative artificial intelligence and so on.
Lovely. Thank you very much for this short introduction. And right on, let's us dive into the topic of today's discussion. And in particular, let us start with the fact that Israel is, in fact, one of the few countries that has a very well-established history and tradition of startup companies and companies that are focused on cybersecurity. And I honestly think that there are few places that cybersecurity has such an impact on companies as in Israel when it comes to public and private companies. Either way, cybersecurity is prevalent and present in every aspect of the company's existence. And from your perspective, because I know that apart from your academic career, you have been a consultant for startups, a consultant for companies. What is a meaningful way, a meaningful relationship that could be built between innovation when it comes to creating new technologies, embracing new technologies, and cybersecurity?
Okay, so first, in terms of numbers and dynamism, we are quite fortunate and proud of the fact that Israel has long become an established global hub for digital innovation, especially in software, networking, and computer security. Startups are an exciting form of commercial instrument that enables entrepreneurs to explore new ideas. However, in terms of in terms of total numbers, the number of people employed and the sums of money invested in startups pale in comparison with the presence of multinational companies. There are about 300 R&D centers of multinational companies in Israel, and if we take only few of the giants, their impact, both on the company's performance and on the global economics of electronic commerce, of platforms and so on, is much, much more clear and visible. So in addition to the giants like Microsoft and Google and others that operate here with each one with thousands of R&D employees, it is interesting to see that in the recent years we see more and more companies from more traditional areas, be it finance, be it manufacturing, be it pharmaceutics, be it retail, that also start paying attention to the need and the opportunity of cybersecurity, and establish initial operations for research and development, for scouting for technologies, and then integrating them in their business life. So in this sense, the potential impact, and I hope the future impact of cybersecurity as an enabler will be much broader than the categories of e-commerce or internet business and platform, social media, and so on. So there's much more to be done. And this directly relates to your question: can cybersecurity innovation coexist? Yeah. Not only they can coexist, we perceive cybersecurity as an enabler. Yeah? Let's take, for example, a company in a traditional business, be it a bakery or a beer brewery. Yeah? Their business is not necessarily digital in our perception. However, the company has one clear interest to do what it does, do it well, grow in revenue, grow in profits, and so on. Therefore, they are often seeking or at least encountering digital components, digital technologies that can improve their operations, their sourcing, their marketing, and so on. Now, the typical situation is that companies embrace some of these digital solutions without paying dedicated attention to the security risk. That's a natural way in a way, yeah. However, they will find one way or another, sooner or later, that these opportunities also come with risks. Therefore, investment in cybersecurity, even attention investment, I'm not talking about developing new technologies or hiring new people, even attention is going to be required. So the most mature organizations, in fact, have developed a way of organizational operation, of organizational culture, in which it is already deeply ingrained in the company, in the people, that cybersecurity and digital transformation are two sides of the same coin. You cannot have one without another. Therefore, the more streamlined the business side and the security side are, the less tension there will be between the security operations seen as a barrier or something that inhibits proper operations to the business line. As you probably know well and better than me, these are the exceptions. Most of the markets, most of the economy operates still in a way where security is perhaps an afterthought, and the approaches used, the technologies used, indeed hamper usability, indeed hamper productivity, and this creates constant tension, which is obviously not productive, and it is a problem.
Thank you very much. And well, it is a kind of popular opinion that cybersecurity is this kind of a handbrake that should activate. Well, it should activate only when something very wrong happens. And basically, it should be this kind of a barrier that should stop the company from going overboard and just going downhill. But at the same time, there is, especially when it comes to agile development, when it comes to DevOps, there is this kind of a thought that cybersecurity is not integral part of the development program process, and it is somewhere sideways from the innovation. And in your opinion, how should the process be in a way constructed? What are the guidelines or the policies that could be in place to ensure that this kind of cooperation runs smoothly? And even if it's not possible right now to establish that guidelines in real life, what are the guidelines that the companies should be striving for in the future?
Okay, so this is you are in effect narrowing down the scope to a more well-defined or better defined segment or market area of software development. Yeah. So secure development lifecycle, shift left, all of these approaches, they are one way to deal with the problem. The problem being very simple. This digital environment that we operate in, from hardware to software to services, is really not built well. It's really constructed on really shaky foundations with plenty of faults, and this is, in fact, not many people will be able to argue with that. It begins with the economics of information security, that the incentives are misaligned. The developers in a way that the American economy commercialized the developments of the internet and so on, the developers and the operators are exempt from any liability. It is a known fact, and it's a choice in order not to stifle innovation in one way, also a result of some lobbying and additional political processes. So we know that the market incentives do not at all encourage investment in safety, resilience, security of this digital foundation. One of the approaches is say, okay, let's change the process of how we develop software-based products and integrate security concerns earlier in, which is an excellent approach. There are plenty of business in this area. There are plenty of guidelines. There are plenty of even educational changes, how you train people. With having said that this is a welcome approach, it doesn't change much the incentives and the economic structure. Therefore, again, no matter how good and well-intentioned and skilled your developers will be, the business as itself will not have a different incentive. So they will continue to ship insecure or vulnerable products, knowingly or unknowingly, and then if someone discovers a problem, they will hopefully patch it or not. So this is just one approach to the problem. This is a much more complicated issue with the roots in things that are not technology. Again, economics, psychology, incentives. So I'm not too optimistic how much this will change. On the other hand, the attempts to measure the improvements of quality and security of software products are growing. There are also research approaches, but also regulatory and other attempts to do it. In some measurements, we can see that there is improvement. Slow, gradual, but still there is improvement. And the final word about the metrics. How do you measure the overall state of software security? We have the numbers of vulnerabilities disclosed each year, which are in 20,000 plus. Of these vulnerabilities, only a few hundreds will be easily exploited. And then we have the useful tool from the American CISA, Cyber Infrastructure Security Agency or something like that, or Critical Infrastructure Security Agency. They published a list of 300 or so most exploited vulnerabilities. And then you can see what these vulnerabilities are, who are the vendors, which the products are the most affected, and how severe these are. It depends on the metrics. If you take total numbers and see that numbers are increasing, you can say the situation is getting worse. On the other hand, if you take the number of exploited vulnerabilities, then perhaps the situation is different. And then, of course, you can go and try to point out and shame in a way the vendors responsible for less secure products. It will be difficult because this list contains all of the major names. Yeah, it is difficult to say that one is less exploitable than others. So there remains a lot of work to be done in this direction.
Perfect, thank you. And honestly, it already stepped a little bit on the next question that I wanted to ask you. So what are the for and against arguments for and against innovation, basically? So what are the aspects of innovation that actually make the cybersecurity team life a little bit easier? And what are the aspects of innovation that actually makes it a little bit harder to keep the employees, to keep the company secure? Perhaps we can focus a little bit on the issue of the legacy applications that are overturned by innovation and how the cybersecurity is reacting to that, and perhaps the technology debt is another aspect that we could have a little bit of a spotlight on for a second.
Okay, so this is more about the practical security operations, right, of the organization. Okay. Well, there are some attempts to benchmark and measure how much or what share of its budget of an organization devotes to cybersecurity. And if you develop such a questionnaire and measurement and survey, people will reply and throw in numbers. However, we have a more substantial issue here. The distinction between daily or simple IT infrastructure and cybersecurity operations is often an artificial one. For example, if you operate in a organization with a lot of legacy unsupported devices and unmanaged networks, but you have a tremendous security operations center with SIEM and SOAR and whatever you like in artificial intelligence, well, maybe your expenditure on cybersecurity in this category is great and it looks excellent and the dashboards are nice looking and everything. But the foundation infrastructure is not only insecure, also it's not manageable. It's not even something that you can monitor and then take action to remediate. So, in this sense, I think that IT modernization should be viewed as an integral element of a total or comprehensive cybersecurity strategy, rather than try to break down the subcategories of IT operations. We should resist this trend to put everything in a very neat cell in Excel sheet, but rather try to see the full picture. Yeah. If you are upgrading from Windows 7 to Windows 10, yeah, it's like it or not, it does contribute in several ways to cybersecurity. Maybe also enables different risks. Now, such upgrades are typically not going to be listed under cybersecurity expenditure. And I'm only talking about a simple example with endpoints. Now, if we're talking about business applications, that's a different story. And the most consequential issue is in critical infrastructure, where we're talking about operational technology, industrial control systems, systems designed and operated for decades. How do you manage these risks given the long time span, the unsupported and legacy technology, and most importantly, the dramatic consequences of a worst-case scenario, which no firm should be able to take into account and deal on their own. Here is already something that demands public sector involvement, be it direct government regulation, be it support, be it some sort of public-private partnership. But these are really, I think, more consequential issue than purely in IT environment. Data, yes, data can be breached, yes, data can be lost in a way, but the consequences of this in a physical term, in terms of direct effect, in terms of loss of life, in terms of destruction of infrastructure, in terms of pollution, in terms of inability to deliver vital services, are much milder than that of physical effects in a chemical processing plant, in a wastewater plant, in an energy transmission networks. So here, in these areas, we see the most, let's say, glaring gaps between the cybersecurity side of things, which is too often separated from operational technology, and the real manufacturing floor, where you have important machines doing very important things for essential services, totally separated from the logic of cybersecurity, not even under consideration of upgrades or some sort of measures to ensure their resilience and to decrease the attack vector, because it's just simply not part of the profession, not part of the engineering operations of such a particular plant. So this is exactly, I think, the more scary issue than in a purely informational technology environment.
Perfect, thank you. And since we already started on the issue of how our everyday life, perhaps not information technology but operation technology, can be influenced by it, and honestly, when I'm thinking about how the IT can actually influence the life and livelihood and life of people, of citizens, the ransomware is a thing that comes to mind. And another issue that basically connected with the innovation that jumps to mind is the issue of quantum encryption. And I know that I'm circling back to something that we already mentioned, but this is basically a red flag that we are seeing right now that will be a problem in a few years, since there are a lot of data right now that is being captured, very well encrypted for the standards that we are holding right now. But with the quantum encryption and decryption powers, what is considered a good standard of encryption right now will not suffice in the future. And how would you say, what is the good process of for the companies to basically think ahead and prepare that the data that is breached today and unusable will be in use in few years to come?
Okay, so first let me say a few words about different types of innovation. When we talk about innovation, we often talk about creating new technologies, creating of innovation. However, there are two additional important aspects to innovation. One is diffusion, how much and how easy can you learn and copy the products of someone else's R&D. And perhaps the most complicated one is adoption. Okay, so you are a company, you know that there exists an innovation that can perhaps improve your operations or render your business obsolete. We have the standard, the gold standard book in this area is Christensen's The Innovator's Dilemma. Yeah. What do you do when you see that there is a dramatic change? Yeah. So the adoption is a difficult part. In ransomware, yeah, the beautiful thing, quote unquote, is how this phenomenon is about adopting different existing elements in the technological field and building a business out of it. Ransomware groups rarely develop anything innovative or on their own. However, the innovation here is a business innovation, how you take and make use of the pervasive vulnerability of the IT environments, the growing value of data, and the growing value of reputational damage, how you take things like wipers and encryptors, how do you finally someone makes use of Bitcoin and distributed ledgers and create a business with tremendous profit margins. That's the innovation that's often more exciting and more impactful than purely the creation of another algorithm or a different machine or a better piece of hardware. So here we have to give credit to the guys in this business. Finally someone is able to make a sustainable revenue stream from this insecurity and the innovations, many of the radical innovations like the distributed ledger technology and bitcoins. Now, as I said, the adoption part is perhaps the most difficult part for organizations. So with the data protection in general, it's very difficult to see simple, pervasive rationale for a commercial company to differentiate itself by investing in higher standards of data protection encryption, especially as this area is regulated. So your responsibility is at best to follow the requirements of the regulation. So here we have a typical example of compliance culture versus security culture. In many of these places, the professionals and the leaders know that even following the compliance will not resolve the problem. But they have zero incentive to fight the windmills and to do something different. With quantum encryption as a forthcoming disruptor, so yeah, you can talk to companies, you can talk to your medical record providers, you can talk to your financial sector. So look, this is coming, you got to do something about it. They will say, maybe, but I don't know what to do. Okay, if someone tells me what to do, maybe I will do it. Or I will try, I will do my best effort. So this is one of the reasons that most of the activity in this R&D area is done by national security and intelligence related agencies. They have the incentives and they have the ability to place bets on very, very early stages of technology. In the commercial sector, I believe that there are some attractive use cases, but they are not as straightforward as it looks like. Breaking someone else's encryption is probably illegal in most jurisdictions, so making profit out of it would be a difficult proposition. Encrypting, so again, we're talking here only about the encryption-decryption scenario. So here, again, this is difficult for me to see how this topic can be relevant to commercial companies, even not-for-profit companies, even public organizations that provide critical infrastructure and vital services, how it's relevant to them directly, other than an experiment, in thought experiment or interesting discussion over nice dinner in a seminar. That's unfortunately the fate of most radical innovations. It's too far out there to do something meaningful about it in the present time scale.
Thank you for that. And at the same time, we are already touching on the innovation that became more present and radical this year than before it was ever present in thoughts of people, even though machine learning and AI as a concept arrived in our imagination in, I think, 1970s or even a little bit earlier with the first papers written on that. And how you mentioned that the issue of regulating AI will be a topic on the Cyber Week conference this year. How would you think the use of AI in cybersecurity attacks is changing the way we perceive cybersecurity policy? Because this is not well, we were talking about how the innovation is changing the security for the better. Let's think about it, how the innovation is changing the cybersecurity for wars for companies, but not because it's developed inside of them, but it's used against them in a way.
Well, here it's useful for me to share some of my insights from working in the university. aside from running the Cyber Week and AI Week conferences, our main business in investing in R&D, allocating research grants. Therefore, we are able to see quite advanced ideas and research projects that are very far from commercialization. Much of the, I think much of the potential risk comes from a competition, let's say, between two or more artificial intelligence systems without human intervention. This is, on the one hand, it's a classic computer science problem where you can present hypotheses about how much information do you need, which type of information, what are the goals, how the learning and unlearning and competition will proceed. So this area is exciting. It's difficult, again, to see very easily the applications in it, but I think this is one of the main areas where artificial intelligence can disrupt much of the current operating procedures, much of the ways that we work now. So let's say, for example, that there are let's say 50 vendors of network security solutions. Each one of them boasts that they integrate AI. Let's take it as a given. Each one of them integrates artificial intelligence to identify abnormal patterns and then initiate a set of actions to mitigate the threat that their systems are able to detect. All of this, now again, we are being generous, thinking that saying everything that they say, the vendors say, indeed works in practice. Fine. Now add to this equation a more adversarial approach, when the solutions are not dealing with a passive stream of data and idle pieces of software, but there is similar artificial intelligence system trying to fool them. So this type of interaction is much more realistic than we think. First of all, because yes, there are threat actors behind the keyboards. Yeah? What you need to detect is not the pieces of code, but a campaign that someone tries to operate. From military scenarios to antivirus scenarios to anything in between, there's a very broad open field for experimentation and surprises, pleasant or unpleasant, with artificial intelligence systems competing with one another, learning, evolving, and sometimes one side wins and sometimes one side loses without any clear predictions about the rates of success. So in this area, let's think about safety mechanisms in industrial control systems or food processing plant. They are, let's say, there are systems of combining sensors, measuring different chemicals or different values, feeding this into some central operator, which then decides in real time to continue the process as usual or to halt it because there is something is not right. In such a case, the data sets are not huge. You don't need too big data for that. This is something that today's computing hardware and algorithms are very well capable of dealing with in almost real time. So we can imagine a scenario where threat actors develop a way to fool these precaution mechanisms. and then you release to the market beer that it's not safe to drink, can create a lot of unpleasant outcomes, not necessarily loss of life. You release to the market medicine, then over time this incident repeat and repeat, which only then further deteriorates the public trust in the institutions, be it the firms, be it the regulators, be it the government. So here again, this is not one catastrophic blow with the end of the world, but a further deterioration of the security environment in ways where you often are not able to know what's going on. No one in the government yet will be able to know what's going on in good time. You will be very hard pressed to identify and attribute this action to a particular group. And most of all, it's very, very challenging situation where, on the one hand, none of the systems that we have failed. They seem to operate normally. On the other hand, the outcome is not good. So this type of deterioration will create a serious cascading effects in economic, social, and political lives over time. And this is something that's becoming more feasible with the advances of artificial intelligence, and given the reliance on computerized systems in everything that we do, that also leverage artificial intelligence in order to do their work. So this is just one of the scenarios. It can sound like a fantastic one, but there is a lot of the building blocks are already there. People are researching it for good purpose, and similar to ransomware, other people will be able then to pick and choose the building blocks and attempt to perform something like this.
Thank you so much. And I think that AI in itself is such an interesting topic that we could have another talk only on that and how it's shaping both cybersecurity and innovation. But as we are slowly running out of time, I will ask you, because you already mentioned one book that might be quite interesting. I would like to ask you what piece of media, perhaps a podcast or a documentary or a book, or several ones, as I know that you have quite an extensive archive of those, would you recommend to someone who is interested both in topics of innovation and cybersecurity?
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of good products in the sea of different books and TV shows and so on. So I would say generally the entire field of cybersecurity and cyber warfare is really represented in an embarrassing and childish way in most media and Hollywood and so on. So there is one TV show, obviously British, The Undeclared War, which, it is a TV show, but their depiction of the operations, of the integration of cyber into interstate conflict, of the politics of it, it's much more realistic than most of the things that I've been seeing before. So The Undeclared War puts the Britain and the GCHQ as the main focus, and then they are dealing with all sorts of unpleasant surprises going on. Still, obviously it's a good TV show, but again, the good part is a bit more realistic. You don't have really childish characters with the hoodies or blinking screens and one button you press and everything crashes and so on. that's one thing. Perhaps I will even integrate it into my teaching one day. As you, sometimes a film can be better than a lot of reading. Now, this is on one hand, it's about adversarial scenario, interstate conflict. However, much of the operations are similar. If we're talking about mature cybersecurity practices, the approaches, the frameworks, the technology, the training of the people is very much similar to those who are supposed to work for the secret services and so on. So this can also be good for practitioners or aspiring practitioners to understand on the one hand the limitations and the constraints, on the other hand the possibilities, and have some fun while doing so. For books, there's a in this talk we haven't touched the rivalry between the United States and China, or between the West and the Chinese rising power, which of course is today much more intensified and focuses, from the American point of view, focuses on restricting access to advanced technologies, blocking China from accessing these technologies and so on. Now, there's a book by two authors, both with a think tank background. Both are working in futurism or wargaming. The book is called Ghost Fleet. It's a novel from, I think, 7 or 8 years ago. It describes it's a novel, so it presents a surprise attack on the United States and the heroism that follows. That's the one part of it. The more interesting part of it is it integrates the cyber into something very easily understood, without using any jargon, without using complicated scenarios. It, in a way, helps the readers to realize that everything, or almost everything that we take for granted in our daily lives, is underpinned to some extent by complex cyber physical systems, by complex information systems, infrastructure, and so on. And then, in that sense, it provides a very good service, especially for non-technical audience, for leaders who we need to get things done, to start them paying attention to this growing set of complex dependencies and the benefits of them, but also the risks. So that's another one. It's light reading. It's in very user-friendly language in this way, without technological jargon, without too much pathos. And the guys who wrote it are actually working in the field, so they are not only professional writers, but very well connected to the defense establishment in the United States, in the way of thinking, the fallacies and the problems, and so on.
Okay, thank you so much. And unfortunately, this is all time that we have with Lior today. And of course, the other piece of, let's say, inspired practice is the Cyber Week conference. As we mentioned, it's happening in a little bit more than a month. And I would like to thank you very much for being with us, Lior. And I hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much for listening in. And עכשיו בעברית, תודה רבה ולהתראות.
Thank you very much, teacher. We are looking forward to seeing you and delegations from the industry and the government in Cyber Week. It's about time, I think, to have more meaningful discussions with your country and it's part of the front lines of Europe. So we're looking forward to meeting you all, and as I said, please to attend to our guests and participants.